On Monday, the war in Sudan reaches its first year. The conflict between the army and paramilitary forces has left over 15,000 deaths and 25 million people dependent on humanitarian aid. After several months of tensions between the rapid support forces and the army for the vacant power after the coup of 2019, heavy fighting broke out, and today there are 10 million displaced people. Humanitarian organizations have also denounced massacres committed in Darfur, more than 19 million children without schools, and an increase in the number and violence of sexual crimes, including those committed against children. Despite international efforts, peace in that North African nation does not look like a possibility in the short term. The United Nations stated that Sudan is facing the world's worst humanitarian crisis after a year of armed conflict between the rapid support forces and the army. According to the latest United Nations report, the conflict has left almost 15,000 people dead, at least 8 million civilians displaced, and 25 million Sudanese in urgent need of humanitarian aid. Humanitarian workers denounced the blocking of international aid, rising levels of famine, and human rights violations. According to the World Food Programme, the states most vulnerable and affected by the crisis are West Kordofan, South Kordofan, Blue Nile, and it's spreading to other areas in the African region. In this context, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres calls for support to the Sudanese in their efforts to emerge from the conflict and to urgently increase humanitarian aid. Also, through the International Humanitarian Conference for Sudan and its neighbors, the United Nations representative described the situation faced by the Sudanese as a nightmare following the bloodshed, sexual violence, and destruction of their infrastructures. Guterres called for more support for donor contributions, the protection of civilians, and guarantees for full humanitarian access in the African country.